Well, good morning and welcome to today's episode of Transformed. Now, for the past several weeks, I've done a little series on forget and be fruitful. Today, I want to talk about remembering and be fruitful. Psalm 77 is a psalm of Asaph when he's in distress. Listen to what he said. He said, I cried out to God for help. I cried out to God to hear me. When I was in distress, I sought the Lord at night. I stretched out untiring hands, and I would not be comforted. I remembered you, God, and I groaned. I meditated, and my spirit grew faint. You kept my eyes from closing, and I was too troubled to speak. I thought about the former days, the years of long ago. I remember my songs in the night. My heart meditated, and my spirit asked, will the Lord reject forever? Will he never show his favor again? Has his unfailing love vanished forever? Has his promise failed for all time? Has God forgotten to be merciful? Has he in anger withheld his compassion? Man, I can imagine all of us have asked some questions like that at times. Maybe you've gone through some hard times, and maybe you've gone through some difficult times that have caused you to ask God the hard questions. The hard questions aren't wrong. Don't let anyone tell you you can't ask God the hard questions. And then he said this. He said, has the years when the Most High stretched out his right hand. He said, I will remember the deeds of the Lord. Yes, I will remember your miracles of long ago. I will consider all of your works and meditate on your mighty deeds. There was a moment Asaph was going through it. He was in distress. He was going through trial, whatever it was. And he asked God the hard questions. But when he was done asking hard questions, then he said, but I'm going to remember. And you see, it's important that we remember the past in order to move into the future. What are the things that we remember? Well, first of all, we got to remember the works of the Lord. You see, the fact of the matter is, when the enemy of your soul is working in your life, remember the works of the Lord are in your life. It is the works of the Lord in the past that did a redeeming work in your life. It's the work of the Lord that did a saving work in your life. Everything in your past was not the work of the Lord. I know people like to say that everything happens is under God's control and was a divine plan. It's just not true. Everything in your life was not the work of the Lord. Some things were the work of your sin. Some things were the work of others' sin in your life. And some things were the work of an enemy in your life. And some things were just the works of life in general. But even though everything that happens in our life is not the work of the Lord, it is the work of the Lord that helps us through everything that happens in our life. Asaph said, I'm going to remember your works of the past. I'm going to remember the things that you did in the past and the ways that you helped me. He said, your ways are holy, which makes his works holy. And so the first thing we have to do is we got to remember, going through hardship and difficulty, we got to remember the works of the Lord in the past. And then the second thing is we got to remember what we used to be. I hope everybody listening to this is a used to be. In other words, you used to be this, but God did this in your life. Asaph said, remember that you were slaves in Egypt and that the Lord your God brought you out of there with a mighty hand and an outstretched arm. You see, remembering what you used to be will remind you of who you are now. I can do a before and after. Before him, before Christ, I was lost. Now I'm found. Before Christ, I was blind, but now I see. Remembering what we were helps us focus on what we are. Israel used to be slaves in Egypt, but now they were sons in freedom. They used to be slaves in Egypt, but now they were the redeemed of the Lord. They became a holy people, a holy nation, a nation of priests. And so every once in a while, someone would remind them to look back, remember his works, but remember what you used to be. Because what you used to be is not where you are, because God has brought you to a new place. And then we got to remember what God did to the enemy in the past. Asaph said, you may say to yourselves, these nations are stronger than we are. How can we drive them out? He said, but don't you be afraid of them. Remember well that the Lord your God did to Pharaoh and to all of Egypt. Remember what he did to your captor. Remember what he did to your adversary and your enemy. In moments of hardship, it's important to remember what he did against that which once stood against us. You see, in moments of hardship and difficulty, what you will remember will help determine your level of faith. Looking back fuels faith in the present. In moments of hardship and difficulty, what you remember will determine your countenance. You might be downcast for a moment, but all of a sudden, when you begin to remember his works and his ways and what he's done in your past, all of a sudden, despair gives way to hope. And all of a sudden, your countenance begins to change. In moments of hardship and difficulty, what you remember will shape the words out of your mouth. You might have a moment of distress, and you might have a moment where you might have cried out in anguish, but all of a sudden it'll give way to a shout of praise. It'll give way to a word of faith. What you remember will shape the words that come out of your mouth. In moments of hardship and difficulty, it'll determine the actions that you take with your hands and your feet. Because what you remember will cause you to be fruitful in the present. It'll make you fruitful in the future. Remember and be fruitful. Have a great day.